Hey, everybody, welcome to this pop up of True Crime Paranormal with this psychic sister. I am Christy Brower, and I am your host tonight. Tonight is a true crime pop up. You may be used to seeing Katie on Fridays and me on Saturdays, but Katie's power has been out almost her entire day. So I'm jumping in here tonight, and she will be around tomorrow for another pop up. But I am pleased to be here with you this evening, and just I have an interesting and important topic to discuss tonight, and one that may be controversial. I don't know. This is about Julius Jones. So you may or may not know this story, but I would like to just share the basics of it. There's a lot going on with the Julius Jones case right now. Julius Jones has been on death row in Oklahoma for 19 years, since 1999, for a murder that he has always claimed his innocence for. He was convicted at the age of 19 and sentenced to death for a murder that happened during a carjacking. And let me tell you a little bit about that. Sorry, just got to scroll here. So, Julius Jones was 19 years old and, sorry, lost my notes here, guys. Hang on one second. Why do things have to move after you've already scrolled to them, right? So he was convicted in the shooting death of Paul Howell. Jones was 19 at the time. This occurred during a carjacking. Julius Jones has always maintained that he was at home eating dinner with his family when the crime happened. His mother and other members of his family did corroborate that. And he has always maintained his innocence. He has also maintained that he was framed by a co-defendant who also was a friend of his in high school. And so this co-defendant, Jordan, he testified against Julius in court and said that he did it. And Jordan said that he just drove the getaway car. Jones has maintained for a long period of time now that he, in fact, was framed by Jordan and that he did this himself. Jordan actually did admit to several different people while in prison that he, in fact, did do it and that he framed Julius for it. Now, you would think that might be enough to reopen his case or to look at his case. A lot of people have looked at his case, but it has not been enough so far to get him at least off death row. Now, he is in Oklahoma. Oklahoma has had a moratorium on their death penalty, actually carrying out executions, since 2015, because unfortunately they had several botched executions. Been a lot of problems with lethal injection over the last several years, as I'm sure you probably know, if you are, into the true crime world and aware of these things. But that moratorium has been lifted. Now, there's been a lot of legal stuff that has been going on. So the Supreme Court lifted the stay of execution for Julius Jones and a man named John Grant. They did, in fact, execute John Grant. So there was a federal appeals court that halted these scheduled executions. And this was taken from the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court vacated the stays of execution. So now there's a lot of confusion in this situation, and there's a lot to be dealt with here. But the parole board in Julius Jones's case actually voted to commute his sentence back in September. But the governor of Oklahoma decided not to allow that to stand and instead said that there had to be a clemency hearing for Jones. And that clemency hearing is on Monday. So here are a few things that you should know about the Julius Jones case. And this comes from the Innocence Project. Julius Jones was at home having dinner with his parents and sister at the time of the murder. This was not presented as a part of his defense at the time of his trial. Julius did not actually match the description of the person who committed the crime. The person who, an eyewitness said the person did have hair. Julius's hair had a shaved head at the time. A man named Christopher Jordan, who was friends with Julius Jones, did match the eyewitness's description. He claimed to be the getaway driver and not the shooter. And he was the state's star witness against Julius Jones. He served 15 years in prison and has already been released. 3 people who were incarcerated with Christopher Jordan at different times have said in sworn affidavits that Christopher Jordan told each of them that he committed the murder and framed Julius Jones. None of these people know Julius Jones. They didn't have any reason to lie about this. They weren't getting anything out of it. You know, there was no incentive for that. However, that has not been enough to at least look at a new trial in the Julius Jones case. There's some pretty clear evidence of racial bias in the Julius Jones case. Mr. Howell was a white man, and I don't want to minimize his death in any way. This doesn't minimize his murder. It just simply means that if we don't know for sure that Julius Jones killed him, should we be allowing Oklahoma to execute him, right? Shouldn't we be as sure as we can possibly be? The crime was characterized at the time of as an act of violence committed by Black men fueled by drugs. This is a racial bias. We see this all the time in the news. Those were things said before the evidence in the case was ever even known for sure. Julius says that the officer who arrested him called him the N-word and dared him to run, and then implied he would shoot him if he did. 11 out of the 12 jurors at Mr. Jones's trial, Julius's trial, were white. And it was known that one juror did refer to Julius by the N-word and suggested that he be taken out behind the courthouse and shot. That is not an unbiased jury. That is certainly not a jury of his peers. So there's a lot of work being done behind the scenes on Julius's behalf. There have been some celebrities actually come forward trying to assist with his case. Kim Kardashian actually went to President Trump and tried to get a pardon for Julius. He didn't do it. James Corden of the Late Late Show has also been working on Julius Jones' behalf. And so now it comes down to this clemency hearing on Monday. Of course, the prosecution, maintain that they're 100% sure they have the right guy. It's pretty clear to me that there are questions, at least enough questions, to make you wonder if maybe it would be worth taking a look at this before we execute someone for this crime. The parole board certainly thought there was enough here to commute his sentence, and yet the governor of Oklahoma has opted to override that for this clemency hearing. There are a lot of politics at play here, and there are a lot of questions about what is the truth. That word truth, right? Do we ever get that? Do we ever get the word justice? Do we ever get those things? I don't know. But this case does trouble me a lot. With all of those concerns and questions, why is Oklahoma still pushing so hard to execute Julius Jones? I mean, he's sitting in prison and has been for the last 20 years. It's not as though he can go anywhere if we take a little time to look into this to make sure that, this is a correct outcome. The racial bias is pretty obvious. I mean, first of all, why was there only one Black person on that trial or on that jury? That's not a jury of Julius Jones's peers at all. And when you have law enforcement using the N-word and you have a jury using the N-word, then you know that there is racial bias here. And when someone else has confessed to this crime to multiple people, and yet no action by law enforcement, it does really make you wonder, what is the reason for all of this? So I wanted to share this tonight because the clemency hearing is on Monday. So today is 10/29/2021. So on November 1st, 2021 will be the clemency hearing for Julius Jones. His stay of execution has been lifted. So currently, unless things go well for him at the clemency hearing, he is scheduled to be executed on November 18th. So we are down to the wire on this particular case. Death penalty cases are really hard, and I'm not asking you to agree or disagree with the death penalty in this situation necessarily. What I am asking is, are we doing enough to be 100% sure? Is it even possible to be 100% sure? But are we doing enough to make sure that we aren't executing innocent people? I mean, we owe him that much, don't we? I realize that Mr. Howell's family are very much in support of the prosecution's decisions and beliefs in Julius Jones's guilt. They don't see any problem here in the way that things have been handled. The problem I have with that is that they are white people. And I don't think, and I am a white person myself, I don't think I, as a white woman, get to judge what the criminal justice system is like for a Black man. I don't. And is there a clear bias here? We all know there is. And honestly, people who refuse to see that are still struggling with their own racism. And not that we aren't all to some extent, but we have to be aware of the fact that I cannot imagine the fear that Julius Jones felt when he was arrested, and the fear that he felt when he saw his jury and saw 11 white faces on it. Obviously, we need reform. Obviously, racial bias is a huge thing. But why the rush now to execute Julius Jones? What is the point of giving this some more time? Looking at the realities that have been brought up by the Innocence Project and by his attorneys, and being doubly sure, right? That's all I'm asking. So this is more than anything a philosophical episode, I think, in just that I don't understand the rush to kill anyone, no matter what they did. We have time to be sure. So I will be updating on this case on our weekly case updates. And so hopefully after the clemency hearing on Monday, we'll know something when we update on Wednesday about what's happening and what's happening in his case, and if they seek another stay, and all of the legal jockeying that happens in a case like this, right up to the wire, up to the last possible second before an execution actually occurs. So I wanted to share that with you. I wanted to give you something to think about. What do we do in cases like this? How do we be sure? And if we aren't sure, why do we take action? Julius Jones certainly isn't harming anyone sitting in his prison cell, is he? And if he is in fact innocent, doesn't he deserve the respect as a human being to have the opportunity to prove that for himself? Just really thinking about him tonight and this particular case. So take a look at the Julius Jones case. You can see more. There's tons more information out there. There are documentaries. There are all kinds of things. There's been a lot done on his behalf, and yet we are still down to the wire. And that's one of the things that is really upsetting to me, is that as hard as the Innocence Project and everyone who has worked on his case has worked, we're still down to the wire here. We're still down to the end with an execution date. So keep an eye on this case, and I will update on this case. Feel free to comment on this video if you have something to say. If you live in Oklahoma and you have some experience with this, I would love to hear what you have to say. But I do want to say thank you for joining me tonight here on this pop-up. I am Christy Brower, and this has been True Crime Paranormal. Have a great night.